There's a lot of discussion about whether we should regulate certain cryptocurrency as commodities or securities. What do you think might the benefits, and maybe you could talk just a little bit about that. What are the drawbacks, things like that?
When you look at cryptocurrencies in general, I've always viewed them like financial stem cells. They're kind of more fundamental than a particular category like a currency or a commodity. And really, it depends on the markets they're traded on and the use and utility that they have. But at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, what public policy considerations are you attempting to satisfy? Is it sanctions compliance? Is it consumer protection? Is it market stability? What we do as an industry is we're all about transparency. So it's kind of funny, we're talking and debating about disclosure regimes. There's no other financial asset in the world that really is as transparent as a cryptocurrency. Every transaction from the very beginning, for Bitcoin, for example, from January 3rd, 2009, is known. Every single one, the holdings of the founder are known because all of these things are publicly available to everybody. So it's more about, in my view, understandability and the tooling required to make this work on a global basis. So I don't think it would be wise to say, well, is it a security or a commodity, or fall into this temptation of who's the more permissive regulator or what is the regulatory arbitrage, but rather just take a step back and say, what things do we want to guard against? And we now have 13 years of history as an industry of, I think, 6 or 7 collapses, a whole bunch of interesting new things like NFTs that have always pushed the limit, and a global marketplace with more than 100 million people floating around that we can draw from, and we can look on a case-by-case basis and build a framework that makes sense.
Chairman Gensler, in your written statement, you acknowledged, as you have in the past, that there are some tokens that are not securities. And I know your view that whether or not a digital asset is a security is a facts and circumstances analysis. I know your view that the SEC has very broad authority. But you've also made it clear in the past that Bitcoin is not a security. Now, some SEC staff have also previously said that Ethereum is not a security. The SEC's Dow report characterizes Ethereum as decentralized. So here's my question briefly, and without getting deep into the weeds on this, and I acknowledge your belief that most tokens have a large degree of central control, but generally speaking, is it fair to say that a significant factor for you in whether or not a digital asset is a security is whether it is centrally controlled or decentralized?
Well, I look to the Supreme Court that's often written about this, probably close to a dozen times in 50 years, and it's whether the investing public is anticipating profits, and that includes anticipating profits from appreciation as well as from, as you mentioned, rights, based upon a common enterprise, but right. The efforts of that common enterprise.
Right. So I guess another way to put my question, which you haven't answered, is it possible to have a common enterprise if it's something is decentralized? How could I have a common enterprise? I mean, it doesn't isn't centralization necessary to constitute a common enterprise?
You could have some things that are quite open, but still have, if the public is anticipating a profit based upon that common enterprise. So I'm being careful with my words here to be accurate as best I can. The common enterprise, are you relying on a group of individuals? And look, these are not laundromat tokens. There is a group of people that are actually—
You're not answering my question, though. But so let me try it this way. What is it about Bitcoin that causes you to conclude it is not a security?
Well, one is there's no group of individuals in the middle.
Right, it's
there's
decentralized.
No group of individuals in the middle.
Right.
That are basically, and you're not, in essence, the investing public's not betting on somebody in the middle or 6 people in the middle.
So you're choosing not to use the term decentralized, but that's what you're describing. It is the decentralized nature of Bitcoin, I think, is really what you're getting at.
Can you speak about how federal regulation of crypto trading platforms under the Commodity Exchange Act is related to market transparency and ultimately to ensuring that retail investors have access to the information they need to properly weigh the risk involved?
Thank you, Congresswoman. I appreciate the question. In thinking about spot markets, say in particular, and overlap of an issue that we are focused on for derivatives products, deals with the concept or the prospect around leverage, an understanding by the individual investor, particularly where that individual investor is a retail participant, that they know and appreciate the risk of trading. While there may be good upside for putting, say, 50 cents down and having $1 worth of a position, there's incredible downside if the market moves against your position. So at CFTC, we're focused not only on market integrity, that we want to have a centralization or a place where market participants can come together and understand what the pricing is, but we also look to have a system of intermediary oversight that focuses on retail market participants, say in particular, with a disclosure regime that informs those market participants sort of based on who they're dealing with. So for example, if it's a commodity trading advisor or a commodity pool operator, that the risks of that trading strategy are disclosed, as well as associated fees. Those are disclosed. That individual market participant understands how their funds are being protected or utilized at a futures commission merchant, for example, that those funds are segregated, and how those funds can also be protected, for example, in the event of a bankruptcy. So we do look for execution certainty as well as customer protection as part of our regulatory regime, and I think that's helpful to the dialogue here.
Mr. Ray, you have compared FTX as worse than Enron. Can you please elaborate on some of the specific ways FTX is worse than one of the largest corporate frauds in history?
The FTX group is unusual in the sense that, I've done probably a dozen large, scale bankruptcies over my career, including Enron, of course. Every one of those entities had some financial problem or another. They have some characteristics that are in common. This one is unusual, and it's unusual in the sense that literally, there's no record keeping whatsoever. It's in the absence of record keeping. Employees would communicate, invoicing and expenses on Slack, which is, essentially a way of communicating for chat rooms. They use QuickBooks, a multi-billion-dollar company using QuickBooks.
QuickBooks?
QuickBooks. Nothing against QuickBooks, very nice tool, just not for a multi-billion-dollar company. There's no independent board, right? We had one person really controlling this, no independent board. That's highly unusual in a size company this is. And it's made all more complex because we're not dealing with, widgets or, or something that's tangible. We're dealing with crypto. And the technological issues are made worse when you're dealing with an asset such as crypto. Enron was really a different company. The crimes that were committed there were highly orchestrated financial machinations by highly sophisticated people to keep transactions off balance sheets. This is really old-fashioned embezzlement. This is just taking money from customers and using it for your own purpose. Not sophisticated at all. Sophisticated perhaps in the way they were able to sort of hide it from people.
And the world is troubled by the extent of the fraud and misconduct at FTX. We all agree on that. Too many people have lost money they thought was safe. Some have suggested that what we see at FTX was unique, a one-off caused by one immoral fraudster rather than something more widespread and systemic. So starting with you, Professor Allen, does this kind of carelessness, misconduct, or worse exist at other crypto firms?
Yes.
Mr. O'Leary?
Yes, the unregulated crypto firms.
Ms. Schultz?
Most likely. Most likely.
Schenken?
It's endemic.
As we've seen larger and larger issues play out in this industry over the past year, how has your concern that you expressed a year ago played out?
So in some ways, I've been heartened by the fact that the banking regulators have really kept this stuff out of the banking system, and I think that's why we're talking about the investors of FTX being harmed rather than everybody being harmed. But still, I mean, I think the idea that crypto is trying to disrupt banking is inaccurate. Crypto and banking would love to merge, and it's the regulators that are keeping them apart. And so as we look at the banking industry trying to dip their toes into this water, I think there are a few causes for concern. Bank of New York Mellon is custodying crypto. JP Morgan is doing trades on permissionless blockchains. So I think we need, to firm up this separation between crypto and banking in order to protect the broader financial system. But as I said, I think, banking regulation has held up pretty well so far.
The prize for crypto is to get regulated. Is that because it gives it credibility?
It can't exist for the institutional client. The potential of crypto is for it to be indexed with sovereign wealth and pension, where about 70% of the world's wealth is actually managed. There's great interest there, particularly around Bitcoin and Ethereum and a few other platforms, but they have no infrastructure to apply to their compliance platforms. When you are managing a $900 billion fund, every day you have a massive compliant infrastructure that marks to market all your positions. There is no infrastructure for crypto. I want to make a note here just around this regulatory issue that you're raising, and it's a good one. Of all the entities that went to zero, that went to bankruptcy in the FTX portfolio, the only one that is not bankrupt out of the 130 plus, and this is probably the best evidence of why we need regulation, is Ledger X. Why? It's regulated by the CFTC. 100% regulated. It is not bankrupt. Had the other entities been regulated wherever they were, they would too not be bankrupt. And so just look at this. This is a use case of why we need regulation. There wouldn't be this tragedy and all of this drama and all the rest of this stuff and the loss of billions of dollars. The lack of regulation has caused some problems here, and it will continue to.